Hi, everyone. I've been a little bit under the weather, so I'm going to have my water with me, too. So this is an essay that I wrote for Medium about a year ago. It's called What I Learned from Comedians, Magicians, and Circus Performers. Last fall, I knew I needed to make a hard pivot in life. A couple of themes kept bubbling to the surface, but I didn't have a playbook for how my next move would truly manifest itself. Instead, I knew I had to go against the definition of insanity and mix it up a little bit. Perhaps in the change I would find a sign. I wanted different results, and I wanted to transform my way of thinking. So I made a concerted effort to go out more, especially to live performances. Spending more time within artistic art energy would get things moving in the latent parts of my brain, or at least that was my theory. So I began with stand-up comedy. We live in Chicago and have an embarrassment of riches to choose from. I went from big venues to small, hole-in-the-wall type places. Sometimes I brought friends along, and sometimes I would go alone, because apparently most 30-somethings need a stronger motivation on a Tuesday night other than a $10 show with no drink minimums. I caught headliners when they breezed through town, but also supported super specific local acts. And while I wouldn't dare call myself an expert on the Chicago comedy scene, I learned several things. The biggest takeaways I gleaned from comedians were to be fearless, command the stage, own your material, yet be ready to improvise. Have a specific worldview, but read your audience, look for nonverbal cues, and moderate accordingly, especially if you found yourself losing them during a set. And some nights there could be a sound issue. Other times there could be a drunk heckler diverting attention of the crowd. But the best comics stayed gracious, in control, and ultimately brought the focus back to themselves. And when the red light started flashing, they knew how to close with a killer one-liner. Next up were the magicians. This kind of happened by accident. I have a friend that's a blues musician, and she has a great holiday party each year. One year, she hired a magician to work the room with card and coin tricks. It was really goofy stuff, but I was captivated. Somehow, it still manages to amaze me how you can watch a process from inception, right before your eyes, but somehow the outcome is not what you expected. My theory is that it's in the places where the eyes and mind are not trained to observe where the real magic happens. Between sets, I spent some time chatting with the magician, and I learned more about his lifelong passion for magic, the regional magician market, clean magic, corporate magic, and how he promoted himself. He admitted that most of his business came through referral. Fast forward a couple months later, I'm at another party in River North, and what do you know? Another magician. More jokes, more tricks, more awe. I mentioned to this new magician, and I wanted to know if going to other magician parties for adults was like a thing. But before I could get an answer to my question, he wanted to know who the other magician was. I couldn't remember the competitor's name, but he did have a signature catchphrase about being a wizard of sorts that I did recollect, and I shared that with him. With this little bit of information, the magician immediately recalled a name that suddenly I seemed to remember. The magician smiled, leaned in, and whispered to me, "We all know each other." It was like magic. Finally, there were the circus performers. I only went to 2 shows, but they taught me something incredible. The first is a prominent French-Canadian circus troupe with several marquee shows in Vegas. Not too hard to figure that one out, right? The other circus was a more obscure regional group of players I had found via an online deal website during a trip out west to visit family. Collectively, the circus demonstrated the importance of teamwork, high performance, and professionalism, no matter the circumstance. The well-known troupe taught me the power of brand and how you must exceed expectations. When you have several highly successful shows under your tent, and you come to town with something new, you will likely sell tickets fast and draw a curious crowd. So you best be ready to deliver, as the bar has been set quite high. The lesser-known circus taught me something entirely different. With them, I did a little research before buying the discounted tickets, as it appeared to be a family-friendly animal-free act, an item of importance to me as I would be bringing small children along. When I arrived, we sat in a tent that probably had a capacity for about 500 people, but sadly, only about 50 showed up on that opening night. It was a beautiful fall Arizona evening, and the circus put on an amazing show that I would argue on some dimensions could rival the well-known troupe. It was incredible value for money, and from the energy, focus, and love they projected in the air, you would have imagined the tent was bursting at the seams with friends, family, and devotees. The lesson I learned is that the best show must go on, no matter what the circumstance. You give it your all and beyond, even when no one is watching. Each lesson was not one that immediately registered with me at the time, but in hindsight, I can see the change in my worldview has happened. Collectively, I've been given a new perspective. Thank you.